On today's episode, Spartan Big Bear preview, the fourth race in the US Championship Series. Welcome to the OCR Report podcast, brought to you by the OCRReport.com. We are the only podcast to focus exclusively on the elite sport of obstacle course racing, from Spartan to Tough Mudder to the OCR World Championships, and wherever the elites are racing, we are there. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the OCR Report. Welcome back to the OCR Report. My name is Will Hicks. Thank you for listening. You can email me at willhicks@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at the OCR Report. Our Instagram page is strong. Go check that out. Kim DeVos runs that for us, and she does an excellent job. And if you enjoy the OCR Report podcast, you can find more great OCR podcasts like Overcome and Run and Obstacle Running Adventures at theocrreport.com. Today in our show, we are talking with Jack Bauer about Spartan Big Bear this weekend. This is the fourth race in the US Championship Series, and it has started to narrow down. There's three top men that are fighting each other for the win in the championship series, and really two women who have separated themselves from the field. And we're going to talk about them also. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Just tap the purple podcast button, search for the OCR Report, tap our logo, and then scroll down to click Write a Review. I would appreciate it. Hey, let's talk with Jack Bauer. Let's go to the phones. Jack Bauer, welcome back.
It's been a while, Will, but looking forward to Big Bear this weekend. It's going to be fun.
Big Bear this weekend. Big race coming up, the next race in the Spartan US Series. Hey, before we talk about Big Bear, though, you did some racing recently. Do you want to talk about it?
Not really. I didn't have a grid. No, it was the second race in the Stadium Series in Washington, D.C., and Ryan Kent walked away with the win on the men's side, and Orla Walsh dominated the women. The women's race was actually pretty interesting. A lot of people didn't see her showing up, but Corinna Coffin actually showed up, and was only about a little less than 30 seconds off the win, got second place. So it'd be really cool to see her back on the Spartan scene.
Corinna was the first TMX champion a couple years ago. It'd be good to see her. Yeah, it'd be good to see her jumping back in.
Yeah, and I know that she, I'm pretty sure she just finished grad school in Utah, maybe, and was just visiting family, because I know that she grew up somewhere in the D.C., Virginia area. But I don't know, maybe it's a sign that she's going to be doing more races instead of just happen to be there on a vacation. So I'd really love to see her start competing again on Spartan. I know that she's much more heavily invested in CrossFit these days, and she got second place at the 2014 World Championships for Spartan in a 4-hour race, which is pretty incredible. So obviously she has a lot of running ability. Everyone knows her from her Battle Frog days, and she's had great Spartan results as well. But if she can start making a name for herself and kind of make a comeback, it'd be really cool to see her after Rose kind of made a comeback already this year. It would be really cool to see some of the original names start to make their way on the scene again.
Whenever I think about Corinna Coffin, I think of the very first Battle Frog race that was on the West Coast in Southern California. I was going through one of those black tubes, and I was far out of contention. I had no, I wasn't even inside of the podium. I was just kind of, doing my own thing. And I get out of this tube, and Corinna Coffin was in it behind me, and I was slowing her down, and she was on her second lap, like racing for the win. I felt so bad. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, Corinna.
Yeah, you must have been just so embarrassed. Never mind just lose it. You're getting lapped by the leaders, and I'm sure she wasn't the only one lapping you that day, because those races has such a giant span. I remember a couple of races where I'd be stuck on a rig, and then Ryan Atkins would come by a second time, and it's like, how is that even possible? But those gaps are insane. But you don't see that anymore these days.
Hey, let's talk about this weekend, the Spartan US Championship Series in Big Bear. What should we watch for in Big Bear?
Well, it's going to be May 18th, and that's the fourth race in the U.S. Series. How crazy is it that it's almost done, and it's only going to be the middle of May? I just can't believe that.
They started so early this year, and they didn't really catch anyone by surprise, but everyone was they didn't announce it until right before the series started in February.
Yeah, and I think they have done a good job spacing it, because what was Jacksonville? That was roughly February 23rd, I think. And then Alabama was like 3-4 weeks later. And then Seattle was 3 or 4 weeks later. It's not like they're cramming them back to back, like really, really short intervals between the races. But I think just the early start, it's really going to, shake things up towards the end of the year. And I think it actually might allow for a really, really good strict training block heading into Tahoe for a lot of people, because the only race between roughly Utah and the end of July for 2 months or so is West Virginia. So not going to be a whole lot of racing between them. I think it's really going to bring out some high performances at Tahoe, just since they had an early start to the year. I know a lot of people also aren't putting a lot of stock at the beginning of the season, and they're aiming for a strong finish to the year. So maybe we'll start seeing some of the people who had a slow start, like a Robert Killian, for instance, or Faye Stenning. They might come into their own later in the year because they just weren't as concerned about really being sharp and fit at the beginning of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
The counterpoint to that would be, yes, that the scheduling is good as far as how they space it out, except for the conflicts with the other competitive series, like the Stadium Series last week.
Yeah, well, the real conflict with the Stadium Series happened a month ago, with Seattle and Citi Field being on the same day, and just Citi Field being the first race in the Stadium Series, and then Seattle being the third in the U.S. National Series. So most people, if they had already run 2 U.S. Series, they're pretty committed to that. They're not going to bail on it and just lose all their points and some of the progress, especially since it really becomes a participation contest in the U.S. Series for a lot of the next level elites. If you miss a race, you get 0 points, and just simply showing up, even if you get 30th, you might walk away with like 170, 180 points, and that's really going to add up. And if you look at the series standings right now, you have like Robert Killian. He missed Seattle, but he's all the way down in like 25th place just because he missed a race. And a lot of people who showed up to all 3 of them are ahead of him as a result of it. So I think that definitely the participation requirements have really shook up the standings so far this year.
Mention the standings. Before we talk about Big Bear specifically, let's talk about the standings so far. Who is in the lead for the men in the points race?
Ryan Atkins has a commanding lead. He has 828 points out of a possible 900 right now. And Ryan Kempson, who started the year really strong, didn't have the performance he was looking for in Seattle. You really have to end up in the top 4 basically every race in order to just separate yourself from the rest of the field. But he still has a really comfortable lead in second place. He has 727. Third place is Ryan Kent, who has 672, and those are the only 3 above 600 points. So there's a pretty safe cushion for the 3 of them, and as long as they perform pretty consistently the rest of the year, I think that those 3 are really going to be a lock for the top 5 at the end of the year.
So there's 2 races left in the series. Ryan Atkins in first, Ryan Kempson in second, and Ryan Kent in third.
Yep, and then a tie for fourth with Kirk DeWint and Johnny Luna-Lima, and then just behind them is Tyler Veerman in sixth. So there's some really surprising names to some people, but those guys always bring it on race day. And I mean, the whole sport is so much deeper these days that it's not really a surprise that the usual standard Big 5 names that we've seen through the years aren't there anymore. The gap is closed between 1A and 1B, and now there are just a bunch of new names really approaching that 1A level.
There's about 90 points between Ryan Kent in third place and Johnny Luna-Lima and Kirk DeWint in fourth and fifth. Do you think the winner of the series will be one of those 3 Ryans?
I do. Yeah, just Ryan Atkins, he won Big Bear last year. He has a 100-point lead, which essentially, as long as he could even get fourth place, and someone else like Ryan Kempson could end up winning the race, and Ryan Atkins would still be in the lead just based on the point differential. So I think that Ryan Atkins has a really good cushion at this point. He's Mr. Consistent. When does he ever have a bad race? He doesn't. So I fully see Ryan Atkins just dominating this weekend and just locking up another U.S. Championship Series title.
Do you think Kempson and Kent have the other 2 spots secure?
At this point, it's going to be really interesting. I think that Ryan Kempson, he has he has a 138 point lead. So I think that means that one of the other guys like Kirk or Johnny or Tyler Veerman would need to win a race and then finish in the top 4, and then Kempson would have to finish outside of the top 4 due to the 192 points for getting 5th or lower. I think that it would take a pretty terrible performance by him to drop out of the top 5. I don't know. I think that Ryan Kent is going to have a really, really strong end of the year. But Ryan Kempson, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up in second or third the rest of the year. But just currently, I think that Ryan Kent is really, really fit, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him move up with a really good showing in Big Bear and lock up second later this year.
Ryan Kempson in second in points right now. He kind of surprised a lot of us at the start of the year when he won the first race in the series. Do you think Kempson has broken through this year to kind of join that Atkins, Woods elite level?
I think it's kind of like VJ, where if it's less than an hour, maybe an hour 10, without a doubt, they can compete with anybody. He's got so much pure speed, and he doesn't have a great, running pedigree. So he's only getting better, which is very rare for a lot of these top guys. Most of them have already been, runners for a decade plus, and there's only so much they can only improve a couple percents here and there. But Ryan Kempson, I talked to a couple guys over the offseason, and I was asking them, like, hey, what's your prediction? Who are some of your breakout? Who are you keeping an eye on? And like my numbers for some of the rankings that I had Ryan Kempson like way higher than he was in previous years. And I was like, all right, he's clearly on the uptrend. He almost won Citi Field last year, and then he was battling at Fenway and a couple other stadium series. He broke his hand, had a little bit of a mishap in the middle of the season, but a couple guys were like, Ryan Kempson, without a doubt, has the most untapped potential in the sport. I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a 2019 just a breakout year. And right away, he had a couple of really strong finishes, including the win in the first U.S. Series race. So he's definitely for real, without question. Anyone who thinks this is just a fluke and he's only fit at the beginning of the season, not true. Ryan Kempson is the real deal.
Ryan Kent won the stadium race a week ago. Do you think that's going to affect him this weekend?
He actually, when he flew back after the race, he was on the trails in Colorado that night doing a second workout of the day after winning the Stadium Series. So I don't think that he was too worried about the Stadium Series race taking too much out of him. I did a workout with him and Tyler Veerman about 2 weeks ago on the Manitou Incline in Colorado Springs. It's basically a mile-long staircase, gets up to almost 70 degrees at the steepest part. It's insane. And just we went up twice, ran down the trail on the side, took a short break just to drink some water, and then a couple of minutes later we were back up. And Tyler went back-to-back sub 25, which is legit, and Ryan Kent was sub 25 on the first one and like 25:10. And those times are really, really respectable, especially doing it back-to-back, not all out either. So I know that the two of them, their climbing is really, really good right now. And I think considering they both live at altitude in Colorado, Big Bear's at high elevation as well, I think that they're really going to make some noise this weekend.
Well, let's talk about Big Bear. How do you think Big Bear plays into the strengths of those three main guys we've been talking about?
I think Atkins knows the course. He won by almost 3 minutes last year. So why would anyone ever doubt Ryan Atkins? So without question, he's going to bring it. He's not going to, even though he doesn't live at elevation, I don't think that's going to matter. He's my pick for the win. Ryan Kent, without question, I think that he, just like I mentioned, he's in crazy good shape right now. He told me he is, quote, fit as a fiddle, and I believe him. And he just took down a really strong field at the stadium race, so he's got his speed right there, and he's climbing like an animal also. So I think that he's going to have a great race. Ryan Kempson, I know that he decided not to do the Stadium Series because he's all in on the U.S. National Series this year. And just with the rate of improvement he's had, if he gets his hydration or his nutrition down and doesn't bonk like a lot of people this race, I think that he's going to have a strong showing as well.
Tell me if this is fair or not. I think of Ryan Kempson as more of a flat course runner than like when I think of Atkins, I think Atkins can do anything. That's not a good example, but there's some athletes we think of as mountain guys. There's some athletes we think of as flat runners. Where does Kempson rank in there?
See, I don't think it's fair to say he might not have had the success at Tahoe historically, or Breckenridge, some of these like super mountain courses. But I don't think that you can solely classify someone as, oh, you're terrible at mountain running. Like, a lot of people think VJ is not a good mountain runner, yet he was right around 10th at Tahoe last year at the World Championship. And most people, would you consider him like, oh, he's a speed guy, he's a flat course guy? And I feel like Ryan Kempson kind of has that same perception about him, but
Sure.
The guy can move, and the more technical and the sloppier the conditions, especially going downhill, he's got some wheels, and he just loves the technical, nasty terrain. And where does that happen? On like Black Diamond ski hills and stuff. So if you've seen, he won Killington last year, the Killington Beast, that ended up being on ESPN, and ended up beating Bracken by like 10 minutes, and took down a pretty solid field there as well. So I wouldn't classify Ryan Kempson as only a flat runner at all. I think that he's a very versatile runner, and he just hasn't had the presence at the top for the number of years that guys like Woods, Killian, and Atkins might have. But I wouldn't just pigeonhole Ryan Kempson as simply a flat course runner.
We mentioned VJ a few times. VJ's in 7th place right now in the points because he missed the first race of the series. What do you think for VJ these next couple races?
Yeah, to be honest, I know that he said his main focus is going to be the NORAM 3K in Vermont later this summer, not even a Spartan race. And I don't know. I don't think that he didn't even race at Big Bear last year. And I thought that he mentioned on a couple podcasts earlier this year that he was kind of up in the air about whether or not he's even going to do the beast distances in the U.S. Series races. I think it would be great if he does show up. I don't know at the moment, but if he's on the start line, I wouldn't doubt for a second that he could easily be in the top 5. Just look at what he did. He almost reeled in Ryan Atkins, who likely put on the brakes a little bit, knowing that he had a good lead, but he almost caught. He was literally on the last obstacle at the same time as Ryan Atkins in Seattle after doing 30 burpees by falling off the Z-wall. Like, that's some incredible closing speed in order to recover from burpees and then gain on arguably one of the greatest of all time in Ryan Atkins. So VJ, if he's on the start line, he is definitely should be in your top 5. So I wouldn't, same thing as the Ryan Kempson argument. I wouldn't say just because it's a hilly course that VJ can't compete. I think that he's a much more improved athlete overall.
We haven't talked much about the guys in 4th and 5th place in the series, Kirk DeWint and John Luna Lima.
Yeah, so I don't know if you listened to the episode that I had with Benny and Bracken on the Obstacle Dominator about Johnny Luna Lima. I named the 6 men in the history of Spartan race who have beaten Lindsay, or who have never lost to Lindsay Webster. And they've faced her at least 5 times. Like Cody Moat, Robert Killian, like almost everybody in the sport has lost to Lindsay at some point in their career, which is just incredible. But Johnny Luna Lima is the dark horse in that group. He's never lost to her. He just brings it on mountain courses, and it's just a really big gamer when it comes to just having a really successful race when there's a ton of competition there. He just paces himself really well. And I looked at the splits for Tahoe last year, and he ended up, and he a couple years ago as well, he ran one of the most evenly paced races in the entire field. A lot of people just go out super fast and then just barely hang on, but they're getting noticeably slower. Johnny just seems to pace himself just amazingly, and I feel like in a race that's easily going to take at least 2 hours, he won't be afraid to stick behind a little bit, but his descending is just, he's one of the best descenders in the entire world for OCR. So I think that he's going to make some noise here as well.
If you had to pick a winner for this weekend between Johnny Luna Lima and Lindsay Webster, who would you pick?
Oh, without question, I'm going Johnny. Yeah, he's going to keep that streak going. As much as I think Lindsay's going to do really well, I think that Johnny, after hearing that podcast, clearly that's the only reason he has to try to do well this weekend, so he doesn't lose to Lindsay.
I'm sure that's his motivation.
Oh yeah, without doubt. Yeah, I actually have some interesting data from last Big Bear. I was looking at it. So Ryan Atkins, he ended up winning it in 2 hours, 13 minutes, and then there were only 6 guys who finished in under 2.5 hours. So definitely a longer race without question. Of the top 4, whatever position you were in at the 1 hour or at the 55-minute mark, none of them changed. So you are what you are in the first hour. If you go down a little bit more, like Ryan Kent, he had the biggest drop in the top 20. He dropped 4 places from 5th at the roughly 1 hour mark, and then he ended up in 9th. Everybody else was like +1 or -1. So basically, wherever you are at the halfway point or a little before halfway point, that's probably where you're going to finish if you're at the front of the pack, the top 15 or 20. So it definitely is a race where you don't want to go out too hard because your legs might blow up on a lot of the descents. But at the same time, if you go too conservatively, the data shows that people just didn't make up ground due to the course layout and how brutal all the climbs were in the second half. So I think that it would really, really benefit people to just be a little bit risky because there's just not a lot of people making up ground in this race.
That's some OCR analytics there, Jack. Well done.
Yeah, I've known a couple things or two about data through the years. So yeah.
That's if you're running this weekend and you're like a top 5, top 10, elite athlete, maybe you're not going to win it, but you feel like you could do well. That's good information. Like the race is won or lost in that first half of the race, the first hour.
Yeah, literally. So the checkpoint at which that happened was from the start until Bender. So Bender, Ryan Atkins, and Angel were basically separated by 8 seconds at that point, and they were just under 56 minutes into the race, and no one really changed positions that much at all. And just people just stayed really consistent. Like I know that I rewatched the video, and that double sandbag, roughly an hour 15 into the race for the lead pack of guys, that it obviously crushed people. Angel actually dropped his sandbag on the descent, and it's just a gnarly terrain, super steep and technical. And it's like 45 degrees also. Never mind that. Imagine going down with the double sandbag. But you'd think that would just lead to a bunch of position changes, but it really didn't, and that really surprised me. From Bender to Bucket, it was like the course of an hour. No one in the top. Only one person in the top 19 places for men moved more than 3 places, more than 2 places in the course of that 1 hour interval. So you basically were where you are at that point of the race. Good
stuff. Any last thoughts on the men before we talk about the women?
I want your predictions. Let's hear those top 5.
This is a little tougher because with Killian being so far out of it, Ryan Woods is not in the top or near the top where we would expect him to see at this point of the season. Mm-hmm. Again, our top 5: Atkins, Kempson, Kent, DeWint, and Johnny Lima in the first 5 places.
That's the series. So last year, the top 5 finishers on the men's side at Big Bear: Ryan Atkins, Angel about 2.5 minutes later, Ryan Woods about 3 minutes after Angel. So Angel, that was probably his best U.S. Series race of all time. He actually just ran a super in Mexico over the weekend, and he lost by about 5 minutes. So that's kind of surprising. But I know he hasn't taken part in the U.S. Series this year. He won a race in San Jose in March or so. But I'm kind of surprised because he keeps posting that he's putting a lot of stock in Big Bear. And considering he lives at really high elevation and he got second place last year, I'm kind of surprised to see that he lost this past weekend. Although he might have been training through it just before starting a taper. So who knows? But it would be interesting to see him come back. But then to round out the top 5 last year was Robert Killian in 4th and then Ian Hosick in 5th.
Do we know if Ian Hosick and Ryan Woods will be running this weekend?
Oh, I wouldn't see any reason why they wouldn't. I think Ian Hosick is designed for a course like this. This is probably his best U.S. Series performance of all time. Last year, he had a really great race and just stayed right at the front from the beginning and just didn't really let off the gas.
Okay, I'm going to give you my predictions. And again, these are, like, for people listening, like, this is kind of like when you're at the beach and you're in the ocean, and like anyone can make your predictions like when the water's high, but when the water goes back, that's when you see who's wearing pants or not. So this makes me very nervous every time we do these predictions. I did well last time, but you could easily go south.
Well, it's like a mock draft. Like everyone still trusts Mel Kiper, but he's an idiot and he's wrong all the time.
Mel Kiper's been on ESPN since I was like 12 years old. It blows my mind that he's still.
Yeah, I don't get it. I think that he's kind of just grandfathered in there, like some of the Chris Berman and like Lou Holtz. They've been around forever. Why not put them on every once in a while? But I don't know. Anyway, we won't look as bad as Mel Kiper with our predictions, hopefully.
All right, let me go with my top 5 men for Big Bear, starting with 5th. Ian Hosick. In fourth, I have Ryan Kempson. In third, Ryan Kent. In second, Ryan Woods. And in first, Ryan Atkins.
All right, solid picks. Okay.
What are your thoughts?
I'm going to go fifth place, Robert Killian. He hasn't had any love this year.
I literally crossed out Killian and put Hosick in fifth. So
no, see, I think that Ian's going to have a great race. No disrespect to him at all. I know that Robert Killian, he posted a run on Bar Trail the other day, and he ran. It was like exactly an hour 10 from the parking lot to bar camp. And when he was on the podium at Tahoe, he did it in like 67 minutes. So he's getting back into shape. I know that he has a little bit of an injury issue. I think it's piriformis, but his fitness is there. His climbing is there. I don't know how his descending is at the moment, if his body's feeling a little beat up, but his climbing legs are back. So I'm going to go with Robert Killian in fifth. Fourth, I'm going to go Ryan Woods. Third, surprise pick, I'm going Tyler Veerman.
Oh.
I think he is crushing it right now on the climbs. I've literally witnessed him do it in person a couple times, and he didn't even look winded. Right ahead of Ryan Kent, and I think that he's going to have a hell of a battle with my second place pick, Ryan Kent, who just came off a win in DC. And first, I'm going to go Ryan Atkins for the win. But I'm telling you, Ryan Kent and Tyler Veerman are fit right now. And I know that they talked about being impressed with Johnny Lima's descending on a couple of runs that they've done with him recently. So don't be surprised if Johnny Lima's up there as well.
You just told me how great Kempson is in the mountains, and I don't see him in your top five.
What if he gets seventh or eighth? That's not a bad performance at all against the best racers out there. I just think that living at elevation and just seeing them firsthand, I'm really confident in their fitness level, and I know that they are too. They've been saying it as well. So that Tyler Veerman, he ended up getting fifth last race in Seattle. Johnny Lima got fourth. So I'm almost regretting not putting Johnny in my top five, but I think they're going to have some great performances. And just a couple other names to look out for. I think Mark Batres, I mentioned him as the guy who I think was going to have a breakout this year, but he was dealing with injuries a lot this offseason from roughly like December until very recently. He said he just finally completed a healthy training block in anticipation for Big Bear. He ended up ninth last year. Not the performance he wanted, but I think that he's going to have a nice showing as well. Kirk DeWint, he posted that he did something ridiculous, like 40,000 feet of climbing in the past month, like in Minnesota. I don't know how you can do that in Minnesota because it seems super flat, at least what I've heard of it. So I think that Kirk is definitely fit, and he bombs downhill. So I think he's going to have a great race. And then another name to look out for, he's a trail runner. He actually helped set that with Jim Walmsley. He was a pacer for the 50-mile world record that got set a couple weeks ago, and his name's Chris Brown. He's a trail runner. I heard a podcast with him like a while ago when I was just curious who he was, and I remember when I was gathering all my data for the rankings, like in 2012. He beat Hunter, and he was like just behind Hobie Call when Hobie Call was like the man back then.
Sure.
And but to beat Hunter back then as well, just to split the two of those, I was like, whoa, who is this guy? And then he didn't race for a few years, and then last year he ended up doing some super and won it by like 10 minutes. And that's insane to win a super by that distance. And he's just a phenomenal uphill runner, and clearly being a pacer for someone going for the 50-mile world record, you're a good runner. And he can descend really well. I've seen just some of his posts. Aaron Newell was giving him a bunch of crap because he had a bad performance in Seattle, but Chris was like, I'll see you in Big Bear, and I have a feeling that he's going to bring it that day. So I'm not picking him in the top five, but if there's a guy who's just running really, really well at the beginning of the race and you're not sure who it is, he kind of might be like Tia Reagan was at the beginning of the year, where it was like, who's this girl going out with Nicole in Jacksonville? Mm-hmm. So just don't be surprised if you see Chris Brown up there.
Okay, so to recap your top five, first to fifth, you have Atkins, Kent, Veerman, Woods, Killian.
Correct.
I have Atkins, Woods, Kent, Kempson, Hosick.
Fair picks as well.
If somebody wants to pick against us and see if they can beat our picks, how can they do that?
Well, this podcast, by the time it's out, if you go onto yanceycamp.com, you will see the prediction contest. So we've had a prediction contest for each of the stadium races and the U.S. National Series races so far. Everyone thinks that they know who's the next big thing, or they're like, oh, I knew that Angel was going to get second last year. I doubt it. Unless it's on paper, I'm not going to believe you. So literally all you have to do is go to yanceycamp.com, and we have an awesome contest that's sponsored by Beat Elite. They've got awesome nutrition products, and then Gooder sunglasses, and those are just amazing on running. They're just really cool looking, and I mean, they're just pretty stylish, honestly. But the winner, whoever picks the best, you pick first place correctly, you get 5 points, and then say you get second wrong, but they were in the top 5 somewhere, you get a point for that, and then you just add up how many points you get. Whoever was the best predictor at the end of the week ends up getting like a huge prize pack from Gooder and from Beat Elite. So you're going to get some awesome product. Nothing to sign up for. You just literally enter who it is, and we're just rewarding the best picks with some awesome products. So definitely get to Yancey Camp. There's going to be a tab that says Trivia and Contests on the homepage, and then just click on the link right there, and it'll pop up with a survey. You just fill in your 1 through 5 on the men and women's side, leave your name, and then you're good.
I'm not eligible to win, but last time I got second place, which I was pretty excited about.
Why are you not eligible to win?
Because, I don't know, man, it's my podcast. Well, I can't win the prize.
Your Yancey Camp prize. I won the stadium one. I was the best predictor for City Field. So I won it.
You have a closet full of Beat Elite right now?
It's on the way. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about the women.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you're more than welcome to enter, Will, and anyone else who owns a podcast, so we can have the battle of the podcast hosts.
I enter, and I haven't won yet, but I feel like I've beaten the other podcast hosts.
Yeah, Matt B. Davis is terrible at guessing. Heather had a pretty good showing. Josh Chase did it well. But yeah, it's interesting to see. But it's not just podcast hosts. There's a lot of just fans of the sport out there, and so love to see people enter. We had, I think we've had like 300 people or so enter so far this year. So a lot of people really paying a bunch of attention to it.
Totally free, and it's fun.
Yep, exactly.
Let's talk about the women. Who is winning the women's point race so far?
The surprise of the year is how dominant Nicole Mericle has been. She is currently in first place, but just breathing down her neck is Lindsay Webster, Miss Consistent. And they're separated by 36 points. Nicole has 864 points because she won 2 events and then got second in Seattle. Lindsay got second to her in both of the first 2 events in Jacksonville and Alabama, and then won Seattle. So she has 828 points. So if the 2 of them flop positions this week, things will get really interesting. So
So if Lindsay wins this weekend and Nicole finishes in second, then they will be tied going into the last race in Utah.
Yeah,
is that correct?
36-point differential from first to second, and that's what they're currently separated at. So then it would all come down to that 5th race, whoever finishes ahead of the other, if that's how this race goes.
You know, Joe DeSena's hoping that happens.
Oh, absolutely. I think the entire OCR world would love to see that happen just because Nicole has really separated herself this year. And Lindsay's Lindsay. She's going to bring it. Just put her on your podium for that prediction contest I was just mentioning. If you don't, it still amazes me. There are like 3 or 4 people who don't put Lindsay in the top 5. And I'm like, she's never not finished in the top 4. And she's only had 2 races out of like 30 where she's not in the top 3. So if you're doing this contest, just put Lindsay in the top 5. So, but then to close out the rest of the top 5 in the point series, a little bit of a gap, or a big gap between them. So Lindsay has 828 points in second. Third is Alyssa Hawley, who's had a really good showing this year. She has 624 points. And then just 2 points behind her is Rea Kolbl in fourth. And then the other surprise of the year is Rose Wetzel making a resurgence. She has 618 points. And then they have a 48-point lead over Faye Stenning in sixth. So pretty comfortable, but obviously you don't want to get too comfortable because someone sneaks in the top 4 from below those names, and then one of them has a race outside the top 5, then suddenly things get flip-flopped a little bit. So it'll be a little bit less secure to be in that 3 to 5 position as the year goes on, unless they have a good showing this week.
You know, we've always known Nicole was fast, and we kind of saw her coming last year. But are you surprised how well she's held her own against Lindsay this year?
I would say, given the course design, I didn't think that it was possible for anyone to win a race against a field as stacked as Jacksonville by 7 minutes. That just blew my mind how that was possible. And then by like 4.5 minutes or so for Alabama, and not just beating anybody, that's beating Lindsay, that's beating Alyssa, Rea, Faye, all the big names that are out there. And so she's just been so dominant. And the field kind of caught up a little bit at Seattle, but Nicole still got second. And I think that this is finally that untapped potential where she's just had a full healthy season, really understands the sport truly. It took a couple years longer than some people thought just based on her running pedigree, but it just goes to show you can't just be a good runner. You have to be just a great overall athlete, and she's a great rock climber as well. But I think that just tying everything together and remaining healthy, this is the first year that's happened, and that's why we're seeing the Nicole that we have so far.
What about Lindsay Webster? She had the most dominant year any OCR athlete, male or female, has ever had last year. What do you think about her season so far?
How ridiculous is it that she gets second place in 2 races and wins another one, and people are like, "Oh, what's wrong with her this year?" Like that's so ridiculous. It's like when people are like, "Oh, LeBron didn't win the finals again. All he did was make it to the NBA championship, but the Cavs stink, so he didn't win, so he's not that good." It's like, well, you're the second best out there, and you're not too far back. So I think that Lindsay, to the naked eye, hasn't had as dominant of a season. But that's just because Nicole has just shined brighter. But Lindsay, without question, she's coming into her own. She ended up having her worst race in the U.S. Series last year at Big Bear, though. She got third. So I don't know. I think that she really needs to place at least one place ahead of Nicole to make it a battle for the 5th and final U.S. event this year in order to have a tie heading into it and then make it a winner takes all. But I think that Lindsay's finally coming into shape, and she's going to have a great race in Big Bear as well.
There's a pretty clear divide between Lindsay and Nicole in first and second, and then third place, really third, fourth, and fifth, kind of all clumped together. They're also within 6 points. Mm-hmm. If you had to pick, one race, Lindsay or Nicole, to win that one race, who would you pick?
What's the distance? If it's like a 3K, I'm going with Nicole. But if it's like an hour or longer and has some good elevation change and a lot of downhill, I'm going Lindsay. I'd still probably pick Lindsay probably 80% of the time over Nicole, as ridiculous as Nicole has been this year. I just think that Lindsay is just, you have to have a perfect race, and she has to have something go wrong, whether it's her hair gets stuck in the barbed wire or some other event, like some unexpected circumstance happens for her to really have a bad race. But like we said, a bad race is second place. So how bad is that in reality?
Let's talk about those women in third, fourth, and fifth. Alyssa Hawley is in third place right now.
Yeah, she's had a great showing so far this year. I think that 2018 was a little rough for her. She kind of was that last straggler in the Fab Five with Nicole, Lindsay, Alyssa, Rea, and Faye. Alyssa was consistently right around that 5-6 mark, and Leanne Wastany, she had some good showings. I know that she ended up in third in Utah and beat Alyssa a couple times. So I think that it seemed like Alyssa, the field kind of caught up to her, but so far this year, she's just had a couple of really strong showings, and that's why she's sitting in third place so far.
In fourth place is Rea Kolbl, 2 points behind Alyssa. Big Bear is kind of tailor-made for Rea, isn't it?
I was going to say, if she woke up and pinched herself and just to check if it was a dream or not, she wouldn't mind either way if Big Bear was reality or not, because she's designed for this course. I mean, Rea, she ended up getting third in Seattle. A lot of people weren't expecting that, and that just built after 2 straight 6th places in Alabama and Jacksonville. So I feel like she's just been salivating, waiting for this race after having won it last year, and she just loves the mountains. So just putting herself in a really good position after Seattle, sitting in 4th place right now. I think that this is a really, really good situation for her, and I think that she might be able to lock up 3rd place if she can pull off a really good finish here as well. Repeating a win, that would move her up in the series a whole lot.
And then 4 points behind Rea in 5th place is Rose Wetzel. How about Rose?
Yeah, she's kind of been the breakthrough, or she had a nice recovery this year in Jacksonville with that 3rd place to start the year. She ended up getting 9th in Alabama and 7th in Seattle, which obviously aren't bad finishes at all, but she does have a 48-point cushion over Faye, who's kind of been underwhelming this year based on her previous year stats. So I think that Rose, as long as she can, if Faye isn't in the top 5 and Rose just has a pretty solid performance as well, I think that she could still be in that top 5 once Big Bear's over. Do
you think we'll see anyone outside of that top 5 that might surprise us this weekend?
Well, how crazy is it that Faye is sitting in sixth? She ended up getting second last year. And do you remember when Rea, Faye, and Lindsay, they were all on that slip wall right at the end, and just everybody was just kind of like just struggling to get up it, and that was one of the few times that they seemed like mortals, because they're always so dominant and flawless during race day, it seems. But I feel like Faye has had a little bit underwhelming year by her standards, getting ninth in Jacksonville, seventh in Alabama, and fifth in Seattle. So she's kind of moved up two at a time. She got second last year. If this trend of two continues, that would mean third. And so it seems like Lindsay and Nicole are a little bit better. So maybe that third place wouldn't be realistic if that trend continues, and she's just kind of peaking right. So I think Faye's going to have a good performance, and wouldn't be surprised to see her in the top five.
Someone I'm surprised to see down at 19th place is Rebecca Hammond.
Well, that's still pretty good considering she only went to 2 races by sitting out at Seattle. I think that's probably the smart move because she was dealing with a little bit of an injury. And especially having to fly cross country, I know that she got 4th in Jacksonville and 3rd in Alabama. So she was sitting really nice in the point series heading into the next event in Seattle. And even if she just walked the course and got 150, 160 points, she still would have been right around or battling for a top 5 position at the moment. So it's kind of a bummer that she isn't going to be in the whole series. But then again, on the men's side, you had Robert Killian not show up to Seattle. You had VJ not show up to Jacksonville. So there's just a couple of big, missing a race really throws off the series, and you can see it on both genders as well. But I think Rebecca, if she's out there, without question, she's going to be a force. She didn't end up doing Big Bear last year, but just based on her race history for the year plus that most people have known her, or actually barely a year at this point, I think that she's definitely always someone to watch for a podium threat when she's on the line and healthy.
Are there any other women you think we should keep an eye on this weekend?
Honestly, I think just looking at the course last year, you had Rea, Faye, and Lindsay finishing between 2:37 and 2:39. And then almost 9 minutes later was Alyssa. And then 13 minutes later was Nicole. There were only 4 women who finished under 3 hours, and 3 of them were under 2:40. So this is the type of course that just really, really separates the strongest climbers and those who just don't get beat up on the descents as well. A lot of people think that this course is all about the climbing, but what goes up must come down, and that really, all that eccentric loading on your quads, that's what really damages you, because I know they had like the double sandbag, and as soon as you reach the bottom, you got to go right back up after taking that pounding. So I think that it's just a survival for this type of course, and you saw it a lot more on the women's side, just based on that giant gap. But I think that, like you said, is there anyone else to notice? I'll say it once, I'll say it again. I don't think that Leanne Wastoney gets enough respect. She was 6th this year. That's kind of her solid spot that she was always in. But I think that she's going to have a great race as well, and because she's always super consistent, right in that 5-6 range.
Do we know if Tia Reagan is going to be there this weekend?
I'm assuming she is. I thought that she was going to do the whole U.S. series, and she kind of stormed out at the beginning and then had some burpee trouble the second half of Jacksonville, but she was right there with Nicole. She was just running great. She was ahead of Nell Rojas, a phenomenal runner, and Nell obviously isn't doing the rest of the series, but Tia had some just body temperature issues in Seattle, and she actually DNF'd. So that kind of affects her points. That's why she's sitting pretty low in she's 28th or so right now. But I think if she's there and her hill climbing's just based on how her flat running is, if she can do any hill climbing, I think this should always be a threat as well. But I don't know if she's figured out the whole obstacle racing thing yet. She obviously has the running down, and she's a good rock climber, but it took Nicole a couple of years to put everything together. So it might be 2020 till Tia really bursts on the scene and makes a name for herself.
I would bet you $1.25 we have the same top 4 women. Maybe not in the same order, but the same top 4.
I'll raise that to $1.02.
But I'm trying to decide on my 5th place woman. And I'm kind of between Rose Wetzel and Faye Stinning. And I almost want to throw in Alexandra Walker, just because I think she could surprise us sometime this year.
She has been climbing like crazy. She's gone out to Big Bend National Park in West Texas, which I've made that drive from Houston before, and it took like 10 hours. So from San Antonio for her, that's got to be like a 7-8 hour drive. That's dedication to get to the mountains, and she's done that a few times. And she is all in on the climbing. She loves going uphill and just putting in mileage. So the longer the race, the better for her.
All right, you talked me into it.
She's knocking on the obstacles. Her grip strength is amazing. So
isn't she a Yancey Camp athlete?
All right, let's hear your 1 to 5.
All right, 5th place, Alex Walker.
I like it.
4th place, and it makes me very nervous to put her this low, Nicole Mericle. In 3rd, I have Alyssa Hawley. In 2nd, Lindsay Webster, which again makes me crazy to not put her in 1st. But I think you're right. I think this is Rea Kolbl's race to lose.
Isn't it so crazy that, like, 2nd place, we're like, what are we doing? Put in Lindsay. That's still 2nd place. But like you said, they should just rename this, instead of Big Bear, just like Rea's course. Because I feel the same exact way, unless she gets stuck on some crazy, the slip wall incident or something like that. I don't think that's going to happen again. I was actually watching the video again from last year just to kind of get a little memory of the race. She was, and I've seen her do it in person, she literally ran the entire thing. She does not power hike. She just takes these choppy steps and just, I don't know how she does it, how her calves or her Achilles doesn't rupture, just running up these 60% slopes. Like, I don't know how she does it, but she is just so good at climbing, and she's a lot better at descending as well. However, I was looking at some of the video, and she lost a lot of ground. They had an uphill barbed wire crawl, and she kind of just, like, as soon as she dipped under one, she kind of kneeled up like, some prairie dog, just looking around and just trying to locate where the next one was. And then she stayed really high, crawled slowly, and then did the same thing on the next one. She probably lost 30 plus seconds on that. So I think that if she can just kind of be a little bit smoother on some of the obstacles, she'll run away with this even more than she did last year. But I'm 100% in the same boat as you. I think that Rea is going to run away, or not run away with the win, but I expect her to be the first female finisher to cross the line in Big Bear.
Jack Bauer, give me your top 5 women.
Okay, so I'll start at 5 again. This is tough. I'm almost thinking the same thing with Nicole, like putting her lower. I think that I'm gonna put Alyssa in 5th, Nicole in 4th, which kills me to do that. I think Faye is going to be 3rd, 2nd Lindsay, and 1st Rea. It's so weird putting Nicole 4th after how dominating she's been, but just looking at the race, she literally finished 24 minutes behind the winner and like 22 minutes behind getting on the podium last year. That's just not good enough. I know she's had a great race or a great season so far, but even a half an hour into the race last year, she was still like over a minute behind the podium. And like I said, for the men's side, you were what you were at around the hour mark. So, I mean, by the time she dropped from 5th to 6th at an hour and 10 into the race, and then she moved up 1 place at the end. But she wasn't really in contention through most of the race last year. And so it sounds so weird, but I think that her reign is coming to an end just based on the course and the topography here. It's not her strength in this case.
Do you know what I'm thinking about with Nicole now that we both locked in? We both picked her to finish 4th this weekend.
I thought you said, okay, you are 4th as well.
I have her at 4th, yeah. I have Alex in 5th.
No, I thought you had her ahead of Alyssa in 3rd, but okay.
Well, just to recap. Okay, so I have Alex Walker in 5th, Nicole in 4th, Alyssa Hawley in 3rd, Lindsay Webster in 2nd, and Rea in 1st.
Got it. Yep,
you have Alyssa in 5th, Nicole in 4th, Faye Stinning in 3rd, Lindsay in 2nd, and Rea in 1st. We have the same 1st, 2nd, and 4th.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I am actually, I'm regretting this. I didn't put Rebecca in there.
Rebecca Hammond?
Yeah. She's like a lock for top 5 whenever she competes. It's too late. Can't change it. I don't want you to have to do any editing, so I'll stick with those, unfortunately. But I might change them online.
You might change your official votes. So here's what I'm thinking about Nicole. Now that we both so we're locking in our official picks on the record at least. as Nicole in fourth.
Subject to change for the Yancey Camp rankings because the deadline isn't until 15 minutes before the race, so I might change it. But right now, this is how I feel.
So last offseason, Nicole went to, I think, Germany and ran a Red Bull All-In or something like that.
Correct.
Basically like a ski hill race, right?
Yep.
Obstacle course race. And she won it. She beat all the other women out there. So...
Oh, I know. I'm just looking
she didn't do great last year in Big Bear, 12 months ago, but... people can change, people can improve, they can train their weaknesses, so...
Oh, I agree. And I think that Nicole, if you look at 2018 Nicole versus 2019 Nicole, no one on the planet could not agree that she's an unbelievably improved racer this year. Like, running away at Jacksonville and Alabama, she's been the woman to beat. She took down Lindsay a couple times. It was really tough to do, and she wasn't that far back in Seattle either. But the thing that's influencing me is that this is more of like a power race, and she's just a little bit smaller, and I don't know how she'll necessarily fare on those like the double sandbags and just power hiking up the hill versus running and being able to stretch it out, because obviously she's going to probably take out the race hard if they have it on a moderate slope at the beginning, because she doesn't like not leading at the beginning. But the only data that we have is that she finished in 3 hours and 1 minute, and there were 3 women who were almost 25 minutes ahead of that. So that's a big gap, and I just don't know if she's closed that versus Rea's capability, Lindsay's capability. Faye's in a lot better shape now. I don't know. I just don't feel like this particular course is made for someone like Nicole. But that's the beauty in the U.S. Series. You have a lot of variety, so it's not like it's just going to be the Nicole show every single race.
If you could change your vote and put Rebecca Hammond in there, if someone's looking to copy off your notes, where would you put Rebecca this weekend?
I would probably put her in third ahead of Faye and then bump everyone down, which would result in Alyssa moving to sixth.
And again, if you want to compete with Jack and I in your votes, go to yanceycamp.com.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you are like, you're an idiot. Well, obviously, Lindsay's going to win, so just go and do that. Like, literally, it doesn't take anything to sign up. I'm just curious seeing who picks who, and I always come out with these stats with like some charts just showing like 87% of people thought that Ryan Woods would finish in the top 2 in this race, and just showing the various picks and who actually called someone to do well. Like, so it's really cool to see how the fans actually feel about the races. So yeah, just go and see how you do, and then early next week we'll see who the winner is, and they'll win some sweet product.
Do you ever get nasty grams from people like, how could you pick them there? They're way better than that. Or why'd you pick that guy so high? You're a dummy.
Yeah, you don't even want to know my inbox sometimes. Like, a lot of people are pretty supportive, but it's always the ones like the Monday after the race, like the armchair quarterbacks, like, oh yeah, you should have done this. And it's like, well, I mean, I'm just guessing based on races and data that's out there. That, like, I don't know. I'm not physically Alyssa Hawley. I don't know if she's in the current fitness to perform at third place or sixth place. Like, it's just all based on how they've raced this year, how they've done in courses, what some of the splits are at various courses where people make moves, like what are your strengths. So that's kind of all I'm going with. But it's really easy to look good on Saturday afternoon instead of before the deadline on Saturday morning.
So if someone wants to tell you what they think of your picks, how can they find you on social media?
Just message me on Instagram, just Jack_Bauer_OCR.
If you don't like my picks, you can email me at justdeleteitsspam@juno.com.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was Will Hicks picks at gmail.com. That would have been a better one.
That's my football parlay email.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that works also.
Jack, any last thoughts on Big Bear before we go?
I just hope the coverage is a little better. I was watching and it looked like, that 1970s shot of Bigfoot walking around and it was all grainy. That's kind of what the Spartan race coverage was like last year. I hope they get some reception.
They kind of go. It's like they take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Like last year there were a lot of races where the athletes would run into the woods and then we wouldn't see them for an hour.
You'd have like a drone above and it's like, oh, there's a human, I think.
Yeah.
And it would hover for 20 minutes, and then you'd hear the announcers like, I think that's Killian, and it's like some guy with hair. So
yeah.
It's like, that's not Killian. Like, and they're seeing what we're seeing. So, yeah, it definitely makes it difficult.
But this year they call them rabbits, like guys like Hammond's out there, like chasing the athletes down, like either running right in front of them or right behind them. And we're getting
JP Donovan, he's ended up having I think he got 6th at Breckenridge a couple of years ago. He's like a literal national team runner, and there's a few other guys who are on the national team. Like those guys are legit who are keeping up. So I think a lot of credit deserves to go with them. They're running around with obviously a GoPro or some stabilizer to try to make the video as level as possible, but it's a really difficult job trying to go uphill with Ryan Atkins and record the thing while not breathing heavy. So I think a lot of credit goes to them. And obviously, when you have a day or two to fix the coverage or edit the video before a release later, like that delayed taping, it better look good. But I still feel like some of the delayed taping isn't even that good. It's a lot improved, but there's still a lot of areas where they can improve. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like I love the guy, the rabbits through the woods with the guys. But man, I wish it was live. And this is a stupid complaint. I wish it was clearer, but I don't want to get too picky. Well,
it's 2019. I mean, they have like cell phone boosters for signals. Like you could use something to have a little bit higher resolution, and instead of being like, all right, let's send it off to Steve Hammond, and then he's like, just in and out. It sounds like he's on dial-up internet. Like you just need to have a little bit better than that, in my opinion, because it just blows my mind how they'll do the delayed taping, and then 2 days later it'll look crystal clear. It's like, wait, where was that on race day? Like you couldn't have overlapped some of that coverage. So that's just a little surprising. But honestly, we're critiquing them, but I think that they've done a really, really good job. I think that they should do more of the stadium races on there, because it's just super. You have the infrastructure set up for the jumbotrons, and like the hallways also. And a lot of them are in a city, so you're going to have good reception. So they could do that as well. But I think that for these major races, definitely you want to get more fans, you have to do it right. And having crappy quality, like if I'm on Facebook Live just trying to find some event to watch and I come across this and it looks like, that Bigfoot grainy video, I'm going to something else right after. So I really hope that they improve it.
Do people browse through channel surf Facebook Live?
I don't know. I'm too old to do stuff like that. I'm not sure what the kids do these days, but I think that I see the icon all the time, like now on Facebook Live, and then they'll give like suggestions. But I don't know. I don't like looking at my phone all day, so I don't do that too often. But I'm sure that there are plenty of people who find it, because it seems like they get a lot of views. At least I'm not sure what the duration of the view is, like how long, if people are just flicking it and then a minute later then they change to something else because they lose interest, or if they're watching a good portion of the show. But I think that there are viewers who aren't familiar with Spartan who do check into it at least.
Man, you talk about being too old. I just figured out how to stream from my iPhone to my Apple TV. So now I can watch, whatever is on your phone, like at 85 inches, like it's meant to be seen. It's great.
Absolutely, and that'll probably help with your vision as it's deteriorating, right?
As I get old, because I am so old.
Yeah. Just kidding. Awesome.
Well, Jack, any last thoughts before we go?
I think the only thing we didn't touch upon was the other event that's going on this weekend for that other brand. You know what?
Let's talk about that briefly. How crazy is it that what would be like a marquee event this weekend is kind of an afterthought? Toughest Mudder East and Toughest Mudder UK are happening this weekend.
Yeah, it just literally, like you said, 2 marquee events, and who's going to be there? I saw a post that Josh Riedinger, who ended up getting 5th at the Citi Field Stadium earlier this year, but also 5th at World's Toughest Mudder last year. I think he got about 85 miles. He's said he's considering joining a 12-hour relay team with someone else if he can find someone who does it. But other than that, Rea is not going to be there. Ryan Atkins isn't going to be there. I doubt Mendoza will. I know Trevor Sykos won't, because he just ran 4 straight days near Mount Everest or something. There's no way that guy's doing a 12-hour event right now in Philadelphia. But all the big names at the front, maybe Aaron Roast, she might end up doing it, because I think that she's in it more for the experience as opposed to the fame and the money. Because I know that she's been doing some ultra training with Dennis Welch. I've seen some of that, but not too many of the big names are going to be there as far as I'm aware. Do you have any insight?
No, I don't. I feel like some of the, I know Trevor's planning on being at World's Toughest. Aaron will be at World's Toughest. I feel like some of those names that we might have seen at Toughest Mudder last year, we're not going to get, Atkins or Rea Kolbl at World's Toughest if there's no prize money, I don't think, which is terrible. But we'll still get, guys like Trevor Sykos, maybe Chris Mendoza. World's Toughest means a lot to him, personally. But again, he's doing this, as kind of a side job now. So I don't know if we'll see him at World's Toughest. But those guys, we will not see them at Toughest Mudder, I don't think.
So you think it might kind of be like a John Albin tactic where no one good races, or not good, but no one at the top of the sport races throughout the season, and then they just show up for the championship, World's Toughest Mudder, and then you might have a few solid names there just for pride. Do you think that might happen? I think
you'll get the pride runners like Trevor Sykos, like Aaron Rost, which I think is great. Like, I think it's good for the sport. Here's the only caveat. Well, no, it doesn't even matter. I was going to say you got to get contender status. But the main benefit of getting contender status or elite contender in the past was qualifying for prize money, qualifying for the bonus prizing, and that's not. I mean, you get a special bib if you get contender status, which is still cool. But I don't think that's enough to get, Ryan Atkins to show up to a race.
I think they're almost doing like a false PR move, and they're gonna miraculously be like, "Oh yeah, we actually decided to bring back prize money at this last Toughest Mudder in whenever September or something," and then they're going to get a bunch of people, and they were planning it all along. That's my conspiracy theory, that they knew a certain amount that they were willing to contribute just to bring it for World's Toughest Mudder, and it'll look good because it'll be like, oh wow, they're listening to the top athletes, they want to bring it back. But I don't really have any inside info. It's just a conspiracy theory that they'll bring it back.
If the money comes back at the end of the year, they definitely weren't planning on it the whole time. I'll tell you that. Like, maybe it does, maybe that happens, but there's no way. Like, it was. I don't think there's a lot of
free flowing cash these days.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of long term planning like that going on right now.
Okay, yeah, actually, I saw that Nolan and Eli, they both aren't working there anymore.
That's the two most influential guys, or most important guys to the race, and then Will Dean also are gone. So.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there goes my conspiracy theory.
Well, Jack, I will look forward to watching the race this weekend, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Sounds good. All right. See you, Will.
Bye, Jack. Special thanks to Jack Bauer for appearing in this episode. There are a lot of races going on this weekend, a lot of big events. There is Toughest Mudder East in Philly. There is Europe's Toughest Mudder, UK Midlands, going on over in England. There's Rugged Maniac in North Carolina, if that's more your jam. I've only had 2 injuries from obstacle course racing since I've been doing this, since 2012. One of them was at a Tougher Mudder in Las Vegas in 2017, right before World's Toughest Mudder. And the other one was at a 5K Rugged Maniac on that stupid lily pads obstacle. You know what I'm talking about? Those like hard plastic lily pads you're supposed to jump, bop, bop, bop. Anyway, I banged my knee up pretty bad. I was limping for a month. You can follow those races this weekend, except for Rugged Maniac. We will not be covering that one. Sorry, not sorry. But to follow the other races, Tough Mudder, Toughest Mudder, and both Toughest Mudders, and the Spartan race this weekend, check out our Instagram page, at the OCR Report on Instagram. We'll have people from the UK. We'll have Carlo Piscatello from Toughest Mudder East, and we'll have results from Big Bear at the OCR Report on Instagram. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.